we'll just give it a minute because it's got to link up with Instagram, and it normally takes a minute.
Okay.
So 1 second. Come on. Always a delay. Oh, here we go. Hey, we're live. Hello, right. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully we'll get a few people join today because I don't know about anyone else, but I've been really excited about this one because I think, Lianne, you're such an interesting character. So we've got Lianne Wright with us today, and I don't really know how to introduce your business because you seem to have so many of them. So I'll let you do that. Lianne, why don't you introduce yourself? Let us know where you hail from.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Lianne Wright, single mum of 3 and a former do-it-all VA. I'm based in Dudley in the West Midlands. And like many VAs, I started out just saying yes to everything. So, admin, social media, bookkeeping, emails, everything, but behind the scenes, I became burnt out. I had an income goal that I wanted to hit. And to hit that income goal by being a do-it-all VA and constantly exchanging time for money is, it's a sure sign for overwhelm. So it wasn't until I kind of hit a wall that I realized that I didn't just want clients. I'd started this business for freedom, and that's kind of where the pivot came from. So looking at lifestyle-based, flexible businesses that don't require me to be tied to my laptop 24/7.
Amazing. And so tell me, how long ago did you become a VA? And did you start as a solo VA? And I know you eventually started working with associates. Was that a strategy you had at the beginning, or was you just winging it? Did you just become a solo VA and then realize you needed to grow?
Yeah. So I started the back end of 2019 and really sort of properly launched beginning of 2020. Then COVID hit. I also had a baby. So, homeschooling my older 2 children, new baby, COVID, brand new business. I mean, I must be mad. But, staying busy at the time was kind of like my remedy just to get through a really uncertain and difficult time. So absolutely started out as a solo VA, offering a range of supportive services to busy business owners. Very generalized, kind of no niche, no specific business or service, in mind, just can help anyone with anything. That was kind of like my motto. And yeah, realized quite quickly that in order to earn the type of income that I wanted to achieve, there was no way I was going to be able to do that with just solo capacity, because as a one-man band, especially when you are a single parent or, just a mom in general, when you've got the house and the kids and all the rest of it, there's only so many hours in the day. And when you're exchanging that for an hourly rate, there's a ceiling on what you can earn. So I'd say probably 12 months in, I mean, literally a couple of months in, I was at maximum capacity.
Wow.
But I knew that, I wanted to just keep raising that ceiling. So I'd say probably at about 12 months was when I first started to grow a team. I originally went down the route of employing somebody.
Really?
So I got premises, I got an office, and I actually hired somebody. And to be honest, that was working great. Having your kind of like right arm sitting next to you and being able to offload, and it worked very well. Unfortunately, and this is another reason why I say, you've got to have kind of backup plans. My biggest client was filed for insolvency. They went bump. So, and they owed me at the time, a couple of invoices as well. So I was forced to get rid of the overheads.
Wow.
Go back to working from home. I very, very sadly and unfortunately had to let the person go because it was an employment contract, and I thought, I can't, be held responsible for this as a regular salary when I've now lost a huge chunk of income. So I kind of took a step back, and then I'd say picked up the pieces, replaced the work that I'd lost, and then realised, actually, I don't want to go down the route of overheads and employer responsibilities. I want to work with associates. And then for the next 3-4 years, I was building a team of associates, just, other virtual assistants like me that were working remotely.
Yeah.
And, that had capacity, basically, that were struggling to find their own clients, or struggling to get their presence in what was becoming a busier space, and wanted to just be behind the laptop doing the work. And so, grew a great team. Yeah.
Amazing. And so you make it sound really easy, like you just became a VA and overnight you had loads of clients, but we all know that it's really, really difficult. And as you say, you didn't niche to begin with. And we talk a lot about niching. I think niching is really, really important. And I think a lot of VAs start with this one strategy, which is, I just got to get clients, and think they can serve everyone, and you can't. So was it as easy as that, or was it a struggle in the beginning? Did you eventually do something different in order to get those clients?
Yeah, look, by no means was it easy at all. It was a case of wearing lots of different hats and juggling. And, there's that old saying, isn't there, when I very first started out, fake it till you make it kind of style. And it was like, I think you've got to present yourself in a way that is going to attract your ideal clients.
Yeah.
So for me, I put myself out to a lot of online and face-to-face networking.
Yeah.
And I truly found that my clients came from relationships that had been built and had formed a foundation of trust, because, it's very, very unlikely that you are going to be, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's highly unlikely, or it's very rare that you are going to be found online just by somebody searching for a VA and they're just going to hire you, with no, so it came from recommendations from people, people getting to know me, like me, trust me, and then going, oh, I know somebody that needs somebody. Lianne, you need to speak to Lianne. Lianne, you'd be great for that. So I think networking was the biggest, turning point for me. It was stepping out of my comfort zone. It was putting myself out there. One of the big mistakes I made was, I spent thousands on websites and, all of these different things that, are fantastic. They're great. They look good. But have I ever picked up a client through my website? No.
Yeah.
Will people look at my website to see if I'm credible? Yes. There's definitely a reason for it. But for me, it was a lot of planting seeds, going out, speaking to people. And then when somebody needs you, you're the forefront of their minds.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I actually say the biggest way we've got clients is through networking and LinkedIn. And the two go hand in hand, because you nurture those connections that you've made, networking on LinkedIn. And then, like you say, you're always at the front and center of somebody's mind in that way. Then, and you're right. I'm always saying you do not need a website as a VA. You need links, you need a calendar to book a call. And that's all you really need. But
and the big thing for me was as well, after picking up, and I talk to VAs literally every day. And I know how kind of busy the space is getting and how competitive it is. And I speak to people all the time and they're struggling to get clients. And, it's why I kind of talk to people about other income streams and things like that. But one of the big sort of things to give yourself credibility is, once you've done a piece of work or once you've secured a client, get the testimonial, get the review, because people buy from people. And it's all right you saying, oh, I'm fantastic and I can do a great job. But when somebody else says, props to Lianne, she did a great job, she did X, Y, Z in a timely manner, she was professional, people get more confidence from
Yeah.
that.
100%, yeah. And if anybody has got any questions as we go along, just pop them in the comments and we'll shout them out. And so before we talk about those additional revenue streams, which I'm really excited to hear about, tell me how your experience was working with associates.
So do you know what? In the majority, it was positive, but it did have its pitfalls at times. I think I was very lucky with two particular associates that were actually with me for the longest. That good people are really hard to come by, aren't they? They're really, really hard to come by. And I have worked with associates that have said, oh, I'm fantastic and I can do all these different things. And so I've said, great, sign a contract here. I'm going to sub some work out to you. And then they've really dropped the ball, or they've just not hit the mark, or, they've missed deadlines. And I don't know if it's an attitude thing, because it's like, well, it's not really my client. I'm doing you a favor. But I'm not sure if it's the nature of the work for some people where they prioritize their own clients and the associate work kind of comes second. But I have had situations where I've lost clients because of associates, because they've really let me down on the standards. And this is what I always said is, to grow your business using associates and continually increasing your capacity is great. However, you are opening yourself up to more and more risk, because it's your name, it's your reputation, they're your clients, but you are, delegating them out to other people. Now, if you're lucky enough, as I say, to get some really good, solid people on your team that you can trust, then you're winning. But there's always that risk when you use somebody for the first time, somebody new, or so it's a bit of a double-edged.
It is, isn't it? I've had some pretty hairy experiences myself, but I'm still a massive advocate for working with associates. I think it's about finding the right systems, processes, and building out the right strategies. Every time I've had a bad experience, I've looked at internally, what could I have done better? And I've developed what I would say now is an amazing team, but that's come from years of heartache first to get there. What would your advice be to any VA thinking about taking on associates?
I would say have a very clear sort of process and criteria for what you are looking for. There are so many virtual assistants out there looking for work, but not every virtual assistant is going to be the right one for you. Look at your business, think of them as an employee, think of them as an extension of your business. What does your business stand for? How do you present yourselves? How do you want to be perceived? And make sure that it is somebody that kind of walks and talks like you, has the same morals and the same kind of integrity. It's like anything, isn't it? Until you try, you just don't know. And unfortunately, there will be those, well, we learned from that. We didn't get what we wanted, but we learned from it. But I would say I'm with you on, it's very empowering collaborating with other people in this space, because we're all here to work. There's enough work for all of us. And I think, working together is really important, but it's just about finding your people. So I'd just have a very clear process in place so that you know exactly what you're looking for. You're asking the right questions. Maybe even have like a little test piece of something, and, a little dummy client or something where you can say, right, here's a piece of work, here's a deadline, this is the standard, this is what I need, and kind of, do it that way.
Yeah, and I think that's really good advice, to treat them as you would an employee. And not enough people do that. I give that advice to clients that, when you take on a VA, you should onboard them as you would an employee. Because if you give them the whole background to your business, what your values are, what you're trying to get to, you're going to get better output from that VA. And it's no different for associates. If you onboard your associates, if they're an employee, you tell them all about your company, what you stand for, and bring them into that dream, then I think it's more likely to be a success. So I really appreciate that advice, and I think a lot of people will as well. But you did really well, and you got super, super, super busy. And like most entrepreneurs, you lost sight of why you started your business in the first place, didn't you?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I saw you post something, I think it was yesterday actually, or I'm sure it popped up yesterday, and it was something about, hitting 10K months and things like that, which, for some VAs that, they could only dream of getting to that point. But, that's where I was. I was hitting 10K months. I had a fantastic team of associates supporting me. I'd got some really long-standing clients, and things were ticking along. But I realised that I couldn't take a holiday because the demands of fulfilling workloads and being present in my business was, too vital. And you kind of, to be honest, it was some personal challenges that came up that really forced me to kind of have a proper moment's reflection of, why am I doing this? What's it all about? But I think for me, losing sight of the freedom and the flexibility was a thing. Now, there are VAs out there that are quite happy to have a couple of clients and just tick over, and that is freedom to them. It's working from home, it's from their own space, it's on their own terms, and that is freedom to them. But freedom to me is, if something happens, if one of my children are poorly, if there's an emergency, or if we just want to take off and go and have a break and have a holiday, I can step out and things aren't going to fall apart without me. And I realized I'd built an incredible business, but I was the key person. And without me, things just weren't going to continue to flourish.
Yeah. And you mentioned there that you had, I know that you had some personal struggles, but you had quite a tragic situation happen. Do you mind talking about that?
No, it's actually, it was the 20th of June today. We're 10 days away from the 2-year anniversary, which is just mind blowing. It literally still feels like it was, last week. So very, very tragically, my children lost their dad on the 30th of June, 2023. He was in a fatal motorbike, road traffic accident.
God.
So, you get a knock at the door at 2:00 in the morning to tell you that, unfortunately, your children's father's passed away, and you think, I've got to wake my children up and I've got to tell them that their dad's died. Like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Then throw in the fact that the emails don't stop, the phone doesn't stop ringing, the work's still piling up. And you kind of go, I don't even know what to do next or first, or how, I don't even know but how to get through this. All I knew was I had to be present for my kids in that moment, and everything else had to kind of just wait and hit pause. I was very lucky with the associates that I'd built great relationships with, that, they kind of picked up the pieces in my absence. But even still, I could remember I'd onboarded a client, and he was only sort of 1 month in. And so we were still kind of, finding our feet and, finding our flow with it. So we hadn't quite hit 1 month. And I remember emailing him to just say, look, I'm going to have to step out. This has happened. I'm going to hand you over to, very, very capable hands of one of my associates. And I got an email back that basically said, your problems are not my problems, and I'm going to cancel. And I was like, I was blown away. But that's the harsh reality of business, isn't it? Business is business. And to lots of people, it is a case of, well, your problems aren't mine. So what are you going to do about it? I still need to be looked after, and my work has to continue. So I think, when something like that happens, you can't help but totally have a shift of, total reflection.
Yeah, 100%. And so that was that like a pivotable, was that like a turning point for you? Was that the defining moment where you knew things had to change, or was it not even then?
Do you know what? It wasn't, because I think for probably 6 months I was just totally numb, and I just was keeping things ticking over, just for fear of, well, I can't lose my business as well as everything else we're going through. So I've just got to keep figuring it out, one foot in front of the other, just keep figuring it out. So it wasn't the turning point, because I think I was in total shock, for, like I said, I mean, certainly for the June to December, it was just like, and then I remember January 24 kind of thinking, right, it's January, it's a new year, I've got to get my head back into this. Because the other thing was, I'd been the driving force of the business, and I'd become a bit of a backseat passenger. I was still there because I had to be, but I wasn't pushing the business forward. I hadn't got that kind of spark and that, burning passion to push it forward. And what happens when you take your eye off the ball? Well, things start falling away. And so, as I was going through all this tragedy and this trauma with my children, and just trying to figure out how we ever get over this, or at least learn to deal with it. And then things started to fall away in my business. So huge fear factor kicked in of like, I'm going to lose everything here.
Yeah.
So I'd say it was probably the January of 24 that I realised something had got to change. And I wasn't even still sure at that point what it was, but I just knew I had to start stripping some things back. So we kind of looked at what clients we'd got, and started to get really clear on who we want to work with. Really changed the brand voice, and started to be much clearer on what we do, who we do it for, and why we do it, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was kind of where the transition started.
Okay. And it's interesting because one of the things that I learned this in my first business. So my first business, I was the only person for 7 years of that business. Literally nobody, I wouldn't let anyone in until I was pregnant and found out my son was going to be fighting for his life when he was born. And so I then had to do something. So I took on an employee, I took on subcontractors, and things really changed for the better from them. But I'd lost the passion and I sold it. But the thing is, when I came into the business I've got now, the VA agency I've got now, you realise that, and a lot of VAs don't realise this, when you are the sole person, you don't think about things like, what if you get ill? What if you get injured? How are you going to survive? And I actually went on a course with an amazing lady called Heather McClellan, and she had this very real life experience of this happening to her, and she actually teaches people what to put in place, like critical illness cover, the kind of insurances that you need so that you can pay your mortgage or you're protected if something happens. And I think VAs just don't treat their businesses seriously enough to think about that. Heather's actually going to be, as you are, on one of our masterclasses in the VIP Access membership that we've now got. I'll leave details of that in the show notes. And she's going to be talking about that, because I think it's so important to not be, like, for me, I've done things like I've put my husband on as a director in the business so he can access the bank accounts. Kirsty, who everybody knows from the show, she's got, access to accounts and things like that. So it can all keep running if I'm not there. But people don't think about that enough, and that's a really important thing to consider. Because even though you weren't ill, something had happened to you and you needed to take a step back. And as you say, we all have these grand ideas of building a business, but we don't actually run it. We wander off to the Bahamas and it's just ticking along nicely. But, this hasn't happened, does it?
No, this is it. And it's like, when I think back to when I was solo VA, all the clients were mine. I got overwhelmed, mom of 3, multiple clients, multiple services, loads of hats, it is a one trip, to absolute burnout. But I was personally earning more then. because what happens when you start working with associates is you've got margins, you know, and when when that incident happened and I had to step out of the business, I had to hand, because I always used to still keep my own clients, you know, but then I had to hand my clients over to my associates. And so those margins were squeezed again. And the reality is the overheads don't stop. The bills don't stop. The, you know, the costs of living and things like that don't stop. But this is why it's a really, really, and this is why I speak to so many people about it all the time, because when you start to scale, the business totally changes. Everything looks very, very different. And then, and I talk about this a lot as well, because I've been left in the SHIT a few times by clients who haven't paid. But this is the other thing is, you know, when you're chasing invoices, when somebody hasn't paid an invoice, but it gets to the end of the month and your associate, rightly so, still wants to and needs to be paid because they've fulfilled the work. But if you've got a client that doesn't pay on time, you can't pay that associate till that client has paid. Otherwise, you're paying out of your own pocket. You know, and it's, it gets really difficult at times. So you know, I take my hat off to anybody doing it, because it isn't easy, and you have to be driven by the passion and the purpose.
You've got to have that entrepreneurial spirit. I think you even want to do it in the first place. Now, it was an awful, tragic thing that happened to you, but it sounds like, as in, you know, you hear this all the time, it takes a tragedy. The silver lining was you learn pretty quickly from that experience, like your margins getting, you know, squeezed. Had that experience not happened to you, maybe you wouldn't have realised. You'd have just carried on building your associate business, but you didn't do that. You then realised something else had to change, and you started to bring in what I love the way you term this, an ecosystem of revenue streams. So tell us what the first one of those was and take us on that journey.
Yeah, so look, the journey for me, like I said, it was a transitional period. I think something as tragic as that, it has to leave a mark, and it has to bring about some type of change. But very often it doesn't happen straight away because it's just too difficult and too shocking to even process. But I'd say it really, for me, made me realize just, you know, how short life can be, and how unfortunately we just do not know what is round the corner or what can happen. And I just knew that I wanted to live more. I wanted to have more moments and more memories with my kids. Now, that's the reason why I started being a VA, was to work from home and be at every school run and be at sports days and be at, you know, all the different activities. But as I got busier and busier and busier, I was less mentally present. I was physically there, but I wasn't actually present. I would always be on the kids, shh, I'm on the phone, you know, or look, I'm just in the middle of something. Can you please keep it down? And you end up getting really uptight, really tense, really kind of, you know, stressed. And I realised this just is not the home environment, especially after what they've been through. This is just not the home environment, and this is just not what I want. So yeah, it was kind of like that aha moment where you go, I'm not doing this. This is not what I signed up for. It was a difficult decision because I had, like I said, built a very successful business. I'd got some really, really long-standing, loyal and wonderful clients that I loved working with. So to tell them that I was changing direction and niching into something else was really difficult. So the ecosystem of it basically comes about from creating lifestyle-based businesses, you know, truly flexible lifestyle-based businesses, ones where you plant the seeds now, you do the work now, and you're building passive residual income so that in 5 years' time, if I don't want to touch my business for a week or a month, I'm still getting paid. My income is not affected because I've done the work. And, you know, once I understood passive income and residual income, that was where the game changed for me. And I thought, that is what I'm working for. Not only that, But the businesses that I'm partnered with and the businesses that I work with, they're willable assets. So the work that I do now and the income that I generate now, God forbid when my time, but those businesses and that income will be guaranteed and paid to my children every month as if I was still here, because I've done the work, I've built the business, I've built the income, and it's a willable asset. So once I started to research and find these types of businesses, I was like, do you know what? Mom to mom, VA to VA, there's a better way. Not saying don't be a VA, because I love being a VA and it's the best decision I ever made. But it's about having other revenue streams, multiple income streams, for, like you just said, even if it's just planning for, events that are outside of our control. When you've got more than one income stream, you won't be faced with that fear factor like I was.
Yeah.
So the ecosystem basically comes from a company called UW, Utility Warehouse.
Yeah.
So UW, it's a multi-service provider for energy, broadband, mobile, home insurance. But by helping people to save money on their bills, which is something we all have to do, whether we like it or not, we've got to pay our bills. But by helping people to bundle their bills together into one convenient monthly direct debit and save them money in the process, because by having multiple services, it gives better buying power. That's where the discounts come from. And by helping families save money on their bills, I get rewarded. And I get rewarded not just once, but for as long as that customer is a customer and pays their bills, I get a residual passive income.
Amazing.
Now, there's something so rewarding about helping people. I mean, I helped a family a couple of weeks ago save nearly £300 a month.
Wow.
They were paying something extortionate on their energy. It was insane. And when we looked at energy, mobile, broadband, don't think they did the home insurance, and we put them together, it saved them something like 290 odd pounds a month.
Yeah.
And then what do most people say they want to do when they save some money? So I'm talking to people and, what would extra money do for you? What would you like a bit of extra disposable income, for? Well, I'd love to be able to take the kids on holiday. I'd love to be able to save for a holiday. So income's the next part of the ecosystem. So I've partnered with a business that allows me to offer travel services. So whether I'm booking travel for myself, for friends, for family, for customers, I'm earning commission. What people don't realize is even when you go to the likes of booking.com or onthebeach.com, even when you've searched and you think, wow, that's cheap, that's got to be the best deal out there, there is still on average 10% commission built into every single booking, whether it's hotel, whether it's flight, whether it's just an overnight stay in London. There's commission in every single booking. So rather than the big players have that, I now offer that as a service. So having sort of moved away from being the do-it-all VA, I now as a VA specialise in travel concierge services. I was approached often by clients to book flights for business travel, even book their family holidays because they're busy and I'm their VA and they're like, Lianne, the missus is going on at me to get this sorted. Can you do that for me? So it was just a no-brainer for me. There's an incredible opportunity to earn again a great income from doing what I was already doing.
Yeah.
Not only that, but by being part of this business, it gives me access to industry-only rates.
Wow.
And we were talking before we went live about the cruise I went on.
Yeah.
That was 5-star all-inclusive cruise that would have been out of the question. It would have been outside of my budget as a single mom of 3. But since joining this business, it was the first thing I did was book that holiday, took my kids on that cruise, and made those memories that are just totally priceless.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the evolution.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And like you say, it makes so much sense when you think about it, because you're already a VA.
Yeah.
You're already, so finding the clients is a lot easier than just going networking and saying, I'm from UW, or I've got travel this, because I don't know, I'll go networking all the time, and that's all that's in the room now is the same kind of people. But if you're already a VA, you've already got the clients there that it's going to be easy to have those conversations, and they trust you. And so are you still offering VA services?
So I still have, because I just couldn't let them go. I still have 2 of my longer standing clients, but it's very, very low level. We've just built such a good relationship, and they just know what I do. I know what they need. So it's really quite low maintenance. So it's not breaking the bank by having these couple of clients at all. It's more just down to a relationship side of things, and just knowing that I just don't want to kind of leave them high and dry. And we've done it for so long. As a VA now, actively looking for business and looking for clients, I position myself. We talked earlier about niching and how important it is. And it's so crazy how, when you know exactly what you do, why you do it, how you do it, who you do it for, your messaging, there's no gray area, there's no confusion. So I position myself now as a travel VA. So, offering first class travel concierge services to busy business owners. So whether that's your next business trip or your next family holiday, hand it over to me. You've got far more important things to do. I'll take the stress off your plate, and I will make sure you have a first class service and look after you from, the moment you book to the moment you get back. So that's what I do now when I offer myself as a VA to business owners. So when I'm networking on LinkedIn, when I'm reaching out to people, when I'm going to networking events, I'm speaking to busy business owners, busy professionals that are looking for somebody to handle their travel planning.
Yeah, amazing. And do you still work with associates or not?
I don't work with associates, no. And this is all part of the transition. Working with associates for the time that I did it was fantastic, and it truly helped me build my business. But for me, it's about not wanting to overcomplicate. The reason I've simplified, the reason I've stripped back is because I just want to be able to, do this on my own terms. I want to be able to do it from anywhere. I want to be able to do it any time of day. And I don't want to have to kind of, be checking in with anybody. So no, I've created this ecosystem and this framework now, so I don't need associates, because the businesses that I've partnered with give me systems, give me training, give me support. So my actual role, my actual job to earn money is just about talking about them, and like I say, in this current climate, who doesn't need to save money on the household bills? Who isn't looking for another holiday? You're
right. And if anyone's got any questions for Lianne about UW or the travel side, just pop them in the comments. But I actually, before I met you, we just moved house, and I did sign up with UW as well. Yes, and you're right, it saves you a whole bunch of money. I mean, I think our monthly bill is £200 and something now, and that's for mobile phones and for our energy services. And then obviously get the cashback card and all of this as well.
The cashback card is fantastic.
So and have you got any other revenue streams, or is it those 2 at the moment?
So at the moment, it is those 2. What I am working on in the background is, so having been a VA, having struggled with the scalability and knowing that systems and processes is fundamentally what is going to make or break your business, especially when you're looking to scale past a certain ceiling. I am working on a project at the moment where I'm building a digital platform, and this digital platform is built by a VA for VAs to give you the done for you systems and processes that you need to scale your business. So that's kind of it's a little project of mine. I'm not putting any crazy pressure on myself because I don't want to lose the passion for it.
Yeah.
But I think because I speak to so many VAs on a daily basis, I've become more passionate now about helping virtual assistants than being one myself. It's like I'm quite happy to just, share my experience and help other VAs, whether that's to find another income stream, whether that's to find the right system, whether that's to, overcome that kind of confidence to put themselves out there. But I've got more of a passion now for helping VAs to see there is a better way. And I'd say that's potentially will be another income stream. But at the moment it's not revenue generating.
Yeah.
It's more of a passion project because I want to help. I think as a community, we are one of the fastest growing worldwide.
Yeah.
We do an incredible job. We take on the things that business owners don't want to do, and we take that on whilst running our own businesses. I think we're superheroes. I think we are amazing. And I think as a community, we just need more support, more resources. And because it's such a huge community.
Yeah.
That, there can't be enough support out there.
You're right. And if people were interested in joining you on and getting started as a UW partner or, the travel business, can we put your details in the show notes?
Yes, absolutely. I always say to people, my inbox, my DMs are always open. I'm, even if it's just a chat, just to offload maybe something that I've mentioned today just resonates with you. And absolutely, we will share my details, and I'd be more than happy to share information, share the opportunities. That is what it's all about for me, is about, spreading the message and helping as many people to have that moment that I've had where you go, wow, there is a better way. This is freeing. This is enlightening. I do feel like I've got my spark back and I've remembered, why I wanted to start my own business in the first place. It wasn't to feel overwhelmed and burnt out.
Yeah, I think it's such a inspiring, incredible story, and you're definitely a true entrepreneur because you still can't let things go. You still,
oh gosh, no,
still got ideas going all the time.
Can't help it. Again, I'm a sucker for like reading things and seeing quotes and stuff, but I think it's like the most successful, and this is one of the things that I've had to learn, because for a period of time I looked at it as failure. I thought of myself as failing because I am, I'm changing direction. I'm moving. Are people going to think, well, she obviously failed? That's why she's changed. And that hits your confidence. That hits your self-esteem. And then you go, will people receive this well, or will people think, oh gosh, what's she up to now? But the average kind of most successful and wealthiest entrepreneur, pivots as many times as they need to. They've started and changed businesses many, many times because they're in the business of getting it right.
Exactly.
And they're in the business of failing as many times as they need to until they find that winning formula.
Yeah.
So failure isn't always failure. It's the next stepping stone to, the next big success. So I
think that's brilliant advice, not to look at it as failure. I totally get what you mean, because, I had a really, really personal, difficult experience with somebody very close to me, coming up to 2 years ago now, but it still feels like only yesterday. And it really knocked me, and I ended up going back to working not with associates. And I felt like I was failing. I felt very much like, oh, well, now it's just me, I failed. And you have to get out your own way a little bit with things like that, because you're right. My business looks nothing now like it did when I first started. it's not necessarily pivoting, it's just that you're evolving all the time.
Evolving, yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
what you've done, Lianne, is just so incredible. Your children must be so proud of you.
Oh, bless
What
you.
a
Thank
role
you
model.
so much. Listen, I can't tell you how many times I've took one step forward and 3 steps backwards. You know, it by no means has been easy, but I think, like you said, that's the entrepreneurial kind of grit, isn't it? If you know you want a business and you know you want to be successful, you just have to realize, what does success look like for me? And success is very different from one person to the next.
Yeah.
What success looks like for you is probably not the same for me.
Yeah.
You've just got to make that definition. What is successful for me? And then, like I said, you know, pivot as many times as you need to until you find that winning formula.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Sometimes when you think you're failing, you're actually falling forwards into something better.
What a brilliant way to put that. That's great. And we have just launched the VIP Access membership, and Lianne is coming along. We have guest masterclasses once a month, and Lianne will be one of our first guests coming along at the end of July.
Yeah.
And you're going to be talking in more detail about building this ecosystem of revenue streams, which I just think is so valuable to VAs. So I think that's it. I don't think there's any more we can really, add to that. But this live will be back on the grid in the next few minutes, and then next week it will become live as a podcast. And in the podcast, on the show notes, we'll put all of your links, Lianne, so that people can, I'm sure people will be reaching out to you to hopefully add those additional revenue streams to their VA business. But yeah, you've been one of my favourite guests.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, I've absolutely loved it. I've been so excited for this. I've absolutely loved it. It's an honour and a privilege, and I can't wait to do the masterclass. I'm so excited.
Me too. Well, thank you, Lianne. Thank you for everyone that's joined. If you didn't ask a question, it's not too late. Just pop a comment in and we can get those questions over to Lianne. Or, Lianne, let us know where people can find you online.
Yeah, well, I mean, on Instagram. So my handle on Instagram is Mom Boss Moves. On TikTok, it's Lianne Mom Boss Moves. Lianne is spelled Lianne. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. Sure to find me pop up somewhere, but Instagram, Mom Boss Moves.
Mom Boss Moves, amazing. Lianne, thank you.
Thank you so much.